Welcome everyone to Almost Cancelled. I am Peter and today I'm going to be talking about All of Us Are Dead Episode 1. This is a new Netflix show. It's a Korean Netflix show which I believe is based on a webtoon. Not that I really know what that is, honestly. But this is a new live action show based on that and it came out today. It's a zombie high school show. I was shocked to see 12 episodes, honestly. I'm so used to Netflix shows being 8 episodes or thereabouts now that it's just weird to see a 12 episode one, especially when they're all pretty meaty episodes. They're all about a full hour, some over that actually. This one's about an hour and 6 minutes, including credits admittedly, but still, it's quite a lengthy episode. Yeah, I'll start spoiler free because it is an episode 1 and we'll get into it. It's very serialized. This first episode definitely spends a lot of time building to the zombie outbreak kind of actually happening. You know, there's teases, there's like one sort of zombie like sort of chained up somewhere kind of thing, and it's building to like when everything's going to crescendo, and we end kind of on the cliffhanger of, oh shit, they realize what situation they're in. So there's not too much to spoil in terms of big plot beats, I would say, this episode. This episode is important though because it's obviously taking time setting up the characters, setting up the style of zombies, the shooting style of the show, which is kind of stylistic actually. Like the opening, which starts off with like some school bullies like beating up someone in a rooftop in the rain. There's like a big kind of camera like crane shot as it spins around the top, and it kind of transitions with a bit of help from CG, I think, into like a wider shot. And there's a few moments like that where it likes to try and at least pretend that they're doing like a nice big oneer. There are, you know, a bit of trickery involved in making it work because they're maybe a little too adventurous with the camera for it to be real. But it does make for some fun moments. It feels stylistic, it feels pulpy. Going into this, like, my expectations were kind of just weirdly all over the place, because on the one hand a lot of zombie movies and TV shows have kind of saturated the world in the last 20 years, but on the other hand this is a Korean zombie show, and Train to Busan is the best zombie movie of that period of the last 20 years. And you know, the last Korean show I watched on Netflix was Squid Game, so you know, there was some like, you know, this might be good, maybe this will be something worth checking out. And it's not Squid Game, it's not like instantly this classic thing like Squid Game is. I will say I mostly get into the episode though. I think what it did well in this first episode, particularly with its 3 main characters, is that it kind of made me care about a teen romance by making it kind of natural, and how do I say realistic necessarily, but it didn't feel like a forced drama thing like a lot of American teen romance stuff does. It felt sort of like just nicely awkward to the point where it you know, it used humor to kind of like get the point across that these two people who have been friends since they were little kids because they're next door neighbors clearly have feelings for each other, but they'll both deny it to their death and they'll never admit it. And it's like typical kid shit, it's typical high school kid shit. And then there's like the good looking popular guy who the girl kind of gets attracted to, and some of the episodes her try to tell him that, and like it kind of comes up. And I think all the beats where it plays these moments out are very likable because the cast are kind of delightful in their awkwardness. But mainly it has a little bit of a pulpiness and poppiness to it. It doesn't really feel like it's trying to, it's not treating it like we are going to be taking it super seriously. It kind of knows what it's doing. And one of the things that I often compliment when it comes to Korean media is how well it handles tone. And this is not as good as Squid Game or even some other Korean movies that I've seen, but even this, which I would put sort of lower down in the rungs, at least after 1 episode. I mean, like, I have no idea how good it might be as it goes further, but even this like was sort of like bouncing around like really heinous like high school bully stuff, where it's really like dark stuff they're doing to some of their fellow kids. You know, we have like, I mean, the opening scene of the episode, the guy that they're beating up they're mad at him because he tried to commit suicide and he named his bullies in the suicide note, and now they're beating him up for that. You know, that in of itself is quite dark, but there's some stuff later on that's, you know, straight up sexual assault. There's some other stuff, but then it'll kind of bounce to other things, and it'll even use the zombies as kind of like this humorous punchline to things. Like there's moments where zombies will run into a wall or go out a window or something like that, and all of those were mostly pretty fun. There were good splat moments, for lack of a better term. If I have critiques about the episode, is that, you know, it does kind of come back to the length of the episode, in that at one point I was like, oh, I wonder how much of this I've got left, and I was surprised that I had like 25 minutes left. I was like, oh, I really thought I was getting ready to like hit the cliffhanger. Like I really thought it was time to wrap up soon. And it's not so much that there's anything in this that I would say you have to cut. I mean, it wasn't really that. It's most of the things that are going on are solid enough to downright good in many scenes, but it's more just that they've cut this into like really meaty 12 episodes, where I almost wonder if it could have been slightly less meaty 14 episodes or something, you know, like just maybe, you know, because it's not just like this first one's a little bit longer. This is not even the longest one, so I did feel the runtime a little bit by the time I was getting to the end, but it wasn't necessarily because I wasn't into its build up of the zombie stuff. I think the reason why the zombie stuff in this so far doesn't seem to feel too tired to me is because it doesn't bask in it, really. It kind of just like, all right, you know what a zombie is, and they're running zombies as opposed to the slow stumbling kind, but you know what a zombie is. You know, so they just immediately start having fun with showing them do ridiculous things, you know, whether it be get into a wall or, you know, landing on something or whatever. And the zombie bites are quite brutal, where there's like bits of cheeks being ripped out and, like, you know, jugulars being ripped out and like bits of flesh dangling from mouths. Like it's kind of like having fun with it. But the key thing more than anything though is that it gave me a couple of characters to kind of like in the center of it, mainly the neighbors, like so it's Onjo's the girl and Chung San's the boy. And, you know, I think they've got a couple of nice moments early on where they set up the relationship that the next door neighbors, Chang Sun's mum owns like a fried chicken restaurant, and she gets a lot of free food from like his family for that, because she's always testing out new recipes, so they go with their friends to get some food. And on the way home, there's a moment where Onjo says she wants to ask Chung San something, and she pulls out her bauble and lets her hair down. And this is like one of these moments where, like, unlike, because I did an on Netflix pilot today, I did In From the Cold, which was the most generic like network TV looking thing ever. And one of the things about this is, even though it's very brightly lit and it's very vibrant and all that a lot of the time, it never feels like it just looks like a soap or it just looks like a cheap TV show. And there's definitely moments like this where it intentionally does this thing with her where, like, from his point of view, she has this angelic lighting around her, right? And her hair's down, and she says, is this better? And she's putting her hair behind her ear. And it kind of treats it as this like extended 30-second thing where he is effectively transfixed because, oh my god, my friend is beautiful. I've got feelings. What am I supposed to do about this? And it's actually a really funny scene. I guess I'm into minor spoilers here, but I'm just talking about this one little interaction. Is at the end of this 30-second of build-up, when she's asking for his opinion about how she looks, is this better? Is my hair down better, right? And he's staring at her. It's all this angelic moment in music and the lighting. And then it all builds up, and he just, like, in typical teenage boy, I can't admit my feelings nonsense, just goes, get lost, and walks away. And what's really good about it is that not only was that a nice, like, subversion build-up, where that was funny that he reacted that way, because it felt true to the characters that we're building, but immediately afterwards, when it cuts to the wide shot, she runs up behind him and just boots him in the back of the leg, and it looks sore. Like, and then he's limping up the stairs, and it feels sore. But there's a lot of little things between them. Like they always like play a game to see who has to carry the other person's bag on the way to and from school. So they play with that a little bit, and they're kind of, you know, they're a little bit mean to each other, but in like a you know, in a we really like each other kind of way. You know, it's very much that. And that's there throughout the episode. And you know, the third party of this, Soo-hyuk, who's like the nice guy who used to run with the bullies but now kind of tries to stick up for people. He, you know, he actually, like, everyone kind of assumes that the two leads are kind of a couple, and he even sort of brings that up when he finds out that she likes him. And like they all, like, Chung-san, when he's asked about it, gets himself into like his own trouble when he kind of denies it feverishly. Like, no, we're not a couple. I would never. If we're in a zombie apocalypse, I'd rather date a zombie. Is the line he has. So it sets up the characters well enough, and he's still a nice enough guy. This third person, that we kind of have a reason to root for them all in some way. Even though I think from a relationship perspective, you're kind of meant to be rooting for the two. You know, neighbors, the two neighboring kids, which, you know, like that's, it's enough to just give them the personality, make you root for them in a way where, I mean, it's obviously a tired trope, but rooting for a romance is inherently rooting for a future, because you don't want them to just like say, okay, we love each other, then die. You're effectively saying, you know, yes, I hope they have a happy life together, which implies they're going to survive the coming apocalypse that they're going to be hit with. Now, I don't know if this spreads enough to be an apocalypse. The first episode doesn't really answer that. There is kind of a tease that maybe it's going to go beyond the school, but you know, like, there's a lot of poppiness in the editing and the camera work. When it first sort of does a little montage of the school, and we get to like see different parts of the school function. We see the choir practice, there's like archery going on, and I'm sure that archery is going to be a useful skill later in the season, no doubt. That seems like something that they'll play with. So yeah, I mean, I guess what I don't know from this first episode is how this last 12 episodes, because this feels like it could be over in one more episode with just like, the zombies kill most people and a couple of our main characters survive. Like, that could be the rest of the story, but it's 11 more episodes, so it's obviously not just that. There's going to be more to this. I suspect that we're going to get our characters to be more proactive, and there's probably, you know, there's a few things set up in this. Obviously we have the bullies who are absolute shitheads, and we're going to probably enjoy watching them get killed at some point. You know, like there's a character in Train to Busan even who's kind of like that. He's this awful person that you're kind of waiting for the zombies to get. To compare it to Squid Game, which, you know, nothing to do with zombies, but the last Korean thing I watched, again, there was an awful like bully character in that who you're kind of waiting the entire time. Maybe this is a trope specifically in Korean media, but like, I can't say that it's not worked for me every time where I'm like, yeah, like, I hope this shithead gets it. It's really striking to me how it can touch on these dark like plot lines throughout the episode, but still kind of just feel like it's being fun most of the time. That's a little surprising, and impressive, honestly. The biggest problem probably is just that it's a bit chunky. It's a bit in the chunky side, and I felt the runtime by the end. But that's, I mean, that if that's my biggest complaint, I mean, we're kind of in a decent place with it, by and large. There was one scene early on that I wasn't like, you know, I felt a little bit ropey on. There's like a zombie killing scene near the start that I didn't like as much, and I thought, oh, maybe this is like the first sign that the episode's not going to be great. But honestly, once it like, and because this was before it even introduced most of the main characters, so once it did that, it was like, oh, okay, now I'm getting into this now. I'm starting to get a vibe of the energy around the school. And an interesting little just personal tidbit is that while obviously they were very different, because I didn't go to school in Korea, in the UK, you know, public schools, you do have to wear a school uniform. So it's actually refreshing to to see a bunch of kids in school uniform in what is essentially high school. Because, you know, American shows and movies, everyone's just walking around and whatever. And it's just weird. This is way more relatable to me that everyone's forced to wear this outfit. But there's some variations on it. You know, there's one girl who's wearing a hoodie over her school uniform, and that was a very common thing. You'd be told to take it off like constantly. Actually, little tidbit on this: one of the teachers in this episode has like a little like holder that she's made to hold everyone's phone, which makes sense. I imagine there's a lot of schools who insist that their phones be handed in, because people sneaking looks at their phone and being distracted, which was already starting to be a problem when I was in school, but that was before smartphones. That was just when it was old school flip phones and things. I have to imagine that a lot of schools probably do this, where they insist you hand in your phone. But she's got like a little rack where she puts all the phones in. I just thought that was kind of neat. So yeah, so I'll say spoiler warning. I'll maybe just talk about some of the big moments of the episode, some of the teases. Obviously, the character who is being beat up at the start, one of the things we kind of realize throughout this scene is that he's starting to actually act like a zombie during the scene, which was just kind of weird. It's a very different introduction to a zombie, because he just sort of mid-fight, like as he's getting beat up, starts to kind of do the sort of the cracking and the creaking and the growling, and he ends up getting thrown off the building and lands awkwardly on like a neon sign and bounces to the floor. It's obviously CG, but it's still a pretty fun looking moment. His father sneaks into the hospital where he's somehow still alive, which, I mean, I say somehow, we know he's at least like kind of a zombie, so whatever, like, okay. He's not completely human anymore, we can go with it. But his father like beats him over the head with a Bible, and this was the scene that I thought was like trying a little too hard, because it's like it does this thing where you just see it through the curtain and you see the shadow of him hitting him with the Bible. I thought that was a bit too much, or trying hard and maybe not quite succeeding in what it was doing for, but luckily from there it kind of smoothed out, and I think most of the set piece moments worked for me. There's a girl who ends up getting bit by a rat or a mouse or whatever in the science lab, which is what it turns out this dad, he's the science teacher. He's the biology teacher, or maybe chemistry or whatever, I don't know. But he like has this like rat that's shielded, but this girl like picks up the shield and ends up getting bit. So he ends up like grabbing her and like keeping her captive for like most of the episode, and then she eventually gets out, obviously, in the back third, and that's when chaos really starts. Kids try to help her, but she actually bites the school nurse, which made me actually think, I don't think I had a school nurse in high school. I had one in primary school, which is the equivalent of like grade school. I don't think I had one in, maybe we did, I just never had to go see her or him. But she gets bit, and it ends up being her that kind of like really starts to spread inside the school. But the girl who was bit is taken to hospital. And another little thing actually is that the main girl, Unjo, her dad is actually the paramedic who comes to get this girl. And there was a scene with him at breakfast earlier on before she came to school, and even that was like a quirky little scene where he's kind of this weird dad who's like, oh, don't try too hard, don't worry about your grades, like being safe and healthy is important. And it's always like she's like, no dad, I can do well, I'll get up into the upper tier this year. And he's like, no, don't push yourself. Don't push yourself. I have limited expectations, just be happy. It's a really weird scene, but it's, despite the fact that it sounds like he doesn't like believe in his daughter doing well, it does come off as oddly endearing. Because he's like, no, I don't want you to stress yourself. I don't want the stress of the world to get to you. So, I'm not saying it's the right parental tactic, but it was oddly kind of sweet in its own way. But yeah, so it establishes another key player who's got a fairly important job in this like zombie world that we're about to enter into. Anjo does get scratched, so we'll find out if that actually still causes an infection. Certainly it doesn't cause it as quick, because all the people who get bit, their faces get bitten off, like they start turning into a zombie within seconds. And it does, this is actually one of the stylish moments, is when the nurse runs out and bites the friend of the bully, who obviously gets away because it's too early to kill that asshole. We get this stylish shot where the camera goes out the window and then goes to other windows and shows you other classes still happening as normal, and things are like, the rest of the school is not aware that this epicenter of chaos has started. And obviously the episode ends with like a mob of like people trying to run from zombies and breaking all the windows in the cafeteria. And we have the cliffhanger where Anjo looks like she's about to be bit, and I'm sure like we're all hoping that Chung San's going to save her, and he does show concern for her. He does run around trying to find her when he hears that, when he notices she's not back in class, because she's one of the people who helps the bloody girl who was trapped in the science lab. She helps her to the nurse's office, and when she doesn't come back, when one of the other kids does, like, Chung-san starts looking at her empty seat and like starts to wonder, where is she? And you know what? That's a very relatable moment. I remember like having crushes in school, and when one was like missing and you didn't know why, you're like, well, are they okay? What's going on? Like, you know, bizarrely a little relatable slice of life moment there for me. But he runs around and looks for her. So you're hoping at the end, I think, for this cliffhanger at episode 2 that he's going to be the one that jumps in and saves her, but it might be Mr. Handsome. It might be the one that she's actually saying she's got a crush on right now, just to, you know, make that love triangle. And I don't like love triangles. Let's make this clear. But they've made me like these two main characters and made me like sort of like their connection. So you're kind of home for it. And again, when he hears she likes this other guy, like it does this thing with the camera where he kind of zones out for a second, and it's like, you know, well, I guess what I'm saying is the direction does a good job of helping show how he feels in these moments, even though he blatantly lies about them, you know, within seconds of it happening. So it's good stuff. But yeah, so one of the darker plot lines of this episode is that the bully group from the start, they actually pick on this other girl and guy who seem to be separate in the sense that they're just kind of like friends or whatever. You know, we find out later that he's got a crush on the girl, but they trap them in this like sort of like construction area, and they rip off her clothes. They force the guy to film her topless on his phone. You don't see, you know, anything explicit here. You know, it makes a point of hiding it, thankfully, because I don't think any of us want to see it. But he, you know, this is a scene that shows that our, you know, Mr. Handsome here, Soo-hyuk, he comes in and like tries to like help them, but sadly, pardon me, sadly, both of these bullied kids say, like, if we leave like with you now, it'll just be twice as bad tomorrow, and they turn back and kind of accept what the bullies are doing to them, and it's really sad. Like, it's a really sad moment. But later on, like, this girl's picked on in class with the bullies like drawing on her back, and it wasn't a slut, but they wrote something on her back that was demeaning. And we have this really sad scene where she's up on top of the roof, and she's at the edge, she's looking down, she's thinking about jumping, and the guy who was there, who was also getting bullied and forced to film her, he's like there, and he's begging her to step down, and ultimately through trying to talk her down, she realizes, wait, do you like me? Like, you care about me? And he, you know, he doesn't even really say anything, he just kind of stares long enough that it's clear that the answer is yes. And this is really sad, as she says, well, you know, I'm a loser and you're a loser, and if we start dating, then we're just going to be even bigger losers, because we're losers who like each other. And it was like, her mind has been so bullied and so warped to this point that that's how she thinks about this. It felt really sad to me that was like her reaction to this. It's like, when it's one, I mean, she doesn't like him that way, fair enough, whatever, but that was her reaction. Is that, you know, maybe she does have mutual feelings, maybe she doesn't, but the idea that she's like, well, we're just going to like have it worse because then we're two losers together, and like, so it's a really sad scene. And the only thing that actually stops her from jumping, because it feels like she's about to, is that when she's about to jump, multiple windows below start to break and zombies attacking people start falling out the windows, and it happens a few times and she's looking down in shock, so that obviously interrupts the flow of what's going on. So the zombie chaos actually inadvertently kind of saves her life, at least momentarily. So we'll see how that develops. I mean, these two characters feel like kind of the B tier of characters that we might follow and care about. I suspect that they're probably doomed, just because of the type of show it is, and that we have to have a body count, but we'll see. I don't know. Yeah, it was good fun. By and large, it was good fun with proper characters that you hate, characters that you root for a little bit, and some fun zombie moments and gore and set pieces. Worth mentioning as well, maybe, that Mr. Handsome seems to like, and I'm just calling him that because that's how he's presented in the episode. But yeah, Soo-hyuk, he kind of seems to like the class president girl who's always wearing earphones and doesn't want to talk to anyone, so maybe we'll see that develop in some way as well. But yeah, so that is the first episode of All of Us Are Dead. Not bad, a little overlong, but some enough style, enough pop and vibrance, and enough characters who you can like and hate that I think you get a little invested in it. So, yeah, I'll be monitoring how this first review does, and if people seem to be into hearing about it, I will be back for episode 2. So make sure you hit the like button, because that lets me know that you do want more of it. Comment, subscribe, ding the bell for notifications, all that stuff. It helps out a lot if you do. And of course, you can support everything we do over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV for as little as $1 per month and keep the content coming. But that is me, so thank you once again for watching or listening. I always appreciate it. Keep watching TV. Have you got any vanilla?